Wow, it's live time. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Good Friday, the goodest. Some might even say the goodest of all the Fridays that occur in any given year. Is it good? Friday's the day that Jesus was crucified, right? What a cruel thing to do to someone. I'm often present to like all of the horrors and cruelties that we visit upon each other from like fear, ultimately. Anyhow, this is a bummer way to start a live. Let's shift the energy. So we're gonna start the way any live should start, any live that happens on a day based on a Christian holiday, which is we're going to do some pagan shit here. We're going to pull from this oracle deck that Bay gave me, The Threads of Fate. It's taken me a great amount of time to start to empower my woo, my spirituality. And if you showed this live that I'm going to do, where I'm going to pull a card, to me 15 years ago, where I was like in law school, really knew what was going on. Hey, Monica, really understood what I was right about, really knew how the world worked. I would have been like, how do I avoid becoming that guy? Like, his beard looks good. He's got good hair. I like his style. His office looks kind of cool. There's a sweet painting behind him. But like, man, is there something I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen? Oh well, so is the spiritual path. So let's see what card we get. One of the things I like about oracle cards is that there's not like a lot of you can attach meaning to them, but really they're just sort of like a it's like opening a book and reading a passage in the book, like a book of poetry, and being like, okay, what meaning am I going to create from that? So it's the same kind of thing. It's like you could think of these almost like a deck of Rumi poems. So what card do we get? We got this card, Power. We got the card of Power. These cards are gorgeous, by the way. They're rose gold tinted and like black, and then like the sides, you can't really see it, but they're put black along the sides. They're very nice. They feel very good masculine energy. So I'm going to set this aside. I have a little metal guy here that holds is just like a cool little paperweight slash holder. And I put that over here on my altar. I'll show you my altar in a second. I'm just going to grab my camera. You're right, Monica. I've got like all these little spirit polka dots. Let's see if this will work without throwing my whole thing out of way. Oh, you can only barely see it. My altar is sort of like right there beside the T, right here, all of this stuff. A little bit of sacredness in front of my desk. So I've got Reggie, this little onyx skull here to absorb all of the negative energy I've got. I've got this little awesome labradorite Ibu, this owl here, the stone of transformation. There's a whole bunch of other cool stuff over here. I think it's really important for those of you cultivating a spiritual practice or even just a practice of devotion, a practice of like reverence in your life. So reverence doesn't have to mean spiritual. It doesn't have to mean that you pull oracle cards or that you do any of that. It just means that you want to slow down and really create some presence and some sacredness in your life, which I think we could all benefit from. Then creating an altar is a great way to start doing that. Sort of a place that holds some stuff that you cherish, some stuff that reminds you of your divinity, some stuff that reminds you to slow down and that fills you with light, the light of God, the light of spirit, the light of creation, the light of just the sheer happenstance that we happen to be on this earth at the same time. Whatever reverence you want to create, cultivate in your life, that can be what your altar carries. So throughout my office, there's a number of altars. There's one here, there's one over here where I meditate and sit with sacred plants. There's some over here on my, there's a bunch of cedar and sage and some waira, which is something used in ceremony there. So there's a whole bunch different places here. Hey, Pauline, hello from Sydney. Holy mackerel. So Sydney, you must be, what are we looking at? Is it like, I think you're about 6 hours, you're like 18 hours in front of me, so 6 hours behind me. Is that right? So it's 10 a.m., it's 4 a.m. That can't be right. Are you a 4 a.m. super morning lark, Pauline? Please, inquiring minds want to know. Please tell me. So I'm going to start by pouring a little bit of tea here out of the Battle teapot. Get ourselves started. We're a little bit ahead of time, so I'm going to quickly come to like a couple questions that we had. And then today we're going to talk almost exclusively about polarity work, so the divine energies of the masculine and feminine. Um, if you've kind of like found yourself confused or caught or unsure about how to navigate like all of the conversation that's going on, or wondering why does sex fall out of my relationship, or what the heck's going on in my relationship, or anything along those lines, this is the live show for you. This is a good one to be on. If you're listening on the podcast, it's a good one to listen to. We'll basically do a deep dive into that work. Let's have a first sip of this hot tea. Ooh, lovely. This tea's called Paris at night, but frankly, if I'm honest with you, I'd say maybe a little more Avignon at night. A little more Avignon, a little less Paris. I don't know. This is what I think. Shake off the tea that I spilled everywhere. Okay, so um, we'll start with David's question here. David, thank you for your question. Always appreciate you. David says, I'm curious to hear your experience of being right with your own coach, teachers, and how that showed up. So what David's talking about is basically, Adam, can you share where you're, well, I'll finish reading this question and I'll explain kind of what he's asking about in terms of being right. So can you share your experience of being right? Did you bring it to them? How did you work through your own brilliance getting in the way of getting supported? But also, how have you learned to trust it more at the same time? As a client, have you had experiences where you felt incomplete or not held and right about that fact? Have you had experiences where you felt you were doing your work and your coaches too, like I was doing my work for my coach? And what supported you to bring that to your own coach? So what David's asking about is one of the like core gates that stands in the way of the transformation we want, the spiritual liberation that we're seeking. And the flavor of that gate is being right. So when we're right about something, we all know this feeling. It's like, yeah, that dum-dum is saying this, but I know I'm right. It's just that experience of knowing you're right. People are saying something and you're like, yeah, yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, but, and then we come back to what we know we're right about. And so this is human. What it is to be a human is to formulate a worldview, a view of how the world is, how it works, how it doesn't work, a view of what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, a view of like what Adam does and is comfortable with and what Adam doesn't do and is not comfortable with, all of that, a worldview. And then we're right about everything in that world view. It doesn't occur to us like a belief that we created. It occurs to us as like truth, abject reality. I'm right about this. It's objective. It's objective truth I'm talking about, not subjective. And the thing, thanks. My speaker just let me know it's charging. Very timely. And the thing about what we're right about is that it doesn't occur to us like just a belief we've made up, because we create a world around us that is a reflection of what we're right about. So what that means is if I have it that I'm right, that it's inappropriate to talk to strangers on the bus, I'm going to be very rude. I'm going to put off energy that like, fuck off, don't talk to me when I'm on the bus. And the only people that are going to show up and start talking to me are people that seem oblivious and rude because they're not really paying attention to that energy. And thus that reinforces that I'm right. The only kind of people that would talk to a stranger on the bus are loonies and madmen and jerks and whatever. And so it reinforces this idea, this belief I have. So when we're on a transformational journey, what's happening is we are engaging with a process that dissolves that worldview. It takes the hard, concrete lines of our worldview and the way the world works, and it starts to make them softer, blur them, so that they can fall away, so that we can create a new, bigger worldview that allows us to create the results that were previously impossible inside our old worldview. That's the essence of transformation. And you're just doing that constantly, all the time. It never ends. Because as soon as you create a new, bigger worldview that allows for like the new results you want to create, eventually you'll create those results. And then you're going to be against the boundaries of that worldview. And then it's time for another one and another one. And some people like to like fool themselves a bit or try to hack around this. And they're like, I'll just create ultimate mega worldview 3.6. It'll be the greatest worldview ever. It'll be the worldview that doesn't have me right about anything. But then you'll be right about not being right about anything. You just can't escape it. So David's question here is, Adam, can you describe your own experiences of like being stuck in your own rightness? Well, David, yes, I can. So people with a lot of brilliance as part of their essence. And if you're like, what are you talking about, brilliance? Look at this book right here. I recommend you read this book. It's fucking amazing and phenomenal. It has a beautiful cover. Look at this handsome devil on the back right there. So read this book. There's a section in here all about the quality of brilliance. Right there, brilliance. And look, there's a nice little graphic here at the front. Oh, boom. Brilliance. The overexpressing shadow aspect of brilliance is condescending and skeptical. And the underexpressing shadow aspect of brilliance is dense and manipulative. So, people with a lot of brilliance, one of the ways we learn to find safety in a world that, when you're young, occurs unsafe, is that we we divide the world into what's right and what's wrong. And we learn how to get really good at figuring out what is right. What's the right answer? How do I determine the right answer so that we can then do what is right? And that will ensure that we're loved. That will ensure that we get recognition from our parents, our teachers, our peers. So people with the quality of brilliance become exceptionally good at dividing the world up into right and wrong and then angling themselves towards right. That becomes our stock in trade. That's how we learn to like make our way into the world. Consequently, we're a natural fit for careers that reward this, e.g., law as one, medicine is another one. As a doctor, you can't be just trying shit out. You got to do what's right. You got to know the rules of the body and what's appropriate and follow it. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff like corporate executive leadership, accounting. These are careers that really reward a very fine-tuned ability to recognize right and wrong. So now we can come to David's question. What is my own experience of being right? Oh, I should add one last caveat. As a result, people with a high degree of brilliance are a nightmare for most coaches because most coaches try to like change or offer a different perspective or like help the client, the brilliant client, like see things differently. And all that does is the brilliant client goes, yeah, I can see why you think that, or I get your point, but, and then they kind of dig their heels in. They entrench themselves further into what they're right about. And then they're like, the coaching's not for me. The coach is fine, but, and it just falls away. So my journey through this, a lot of where my righteousness showed up was less with my coaches and more in the leadership structure that was a significant part of my early initiation into this work. So accomplishment coaching was that group. I trained with them, and then I led their work in varying capacities, moving up the ranks, developing and deepening as a leader over the course of about 5 years. So I had about 5 years total in this structure. The first coach they assigned me during my training year drove me bonkers. She was like a sassy black woman, middle-aged, frankly, an angel from heaven for me, but I didn't see that. What I saw was this woman that would get defensive with me, that like didn't understand me, that would offer stuff, and I was just like, she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. I would just continually dismiss her because I had classified her as wrong and I was right. And so it's interesting because I had this memory of how our work together was. And when I go back and look at the emails that we corresponded with, I'd send her an email, here's what's going on, or blah, blah, blah. I can see how gentle she was. She gave me so much space to be in my process. And I had so little space for my process and her in it. So with her, the way I had to kind of work through this, yes, I'll give you access. Go ahead, give access. This thing over here is asking me for it. Yeah, you go ahead, edit the files. I don't care. Yeah, do your thing. You're a program. Just do whatever. I don't care. And so with her, I would get frustrated in her coaching, and then I would bring it into the program I was a part of, which was part of the design. I'd work with my coach. They'd assign me a coach that would kind of trigger me, and then I would bring that to the program. They would support me to go back and re-empower that coach. The problem wasn't the coach. It was the way I was relating to her, which was that she was wrong. She didn't understand, which allowed me to move back into the world I knew. It allowed me to stay rooted in what I knew I was right about, which was fine, but there's not going to be any transformation there. There's not going to be any shift. And so I would bring this to the leaders of this program, be like, she's driving me nuts, blah, 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 blah. And they would start to help me to see how all of what I was complaining about existed in a world of what I was right about. And the hard work of that was really, um, I had to actively choose to hear her differently. She didn't change the way she spoke to me. She didn't change the things she was saying. I was just challenged to like notice how I was separating stuff into right and wrong, and instead to practice listening from a different place. That was infuriating for me. It felt like putting my underwear on my head and going outside. Like it just didn't make sense. It was like using a bicycle to try to hammer a nail into a piece of wood. What am I doing? This is dumb. But I had to trust this program I was in. I had to trust that there was something outside of what I could see, because that's the only way we're going to get beyond our blind spot. If we only sit inside the world of what we know, what we can see, there'll never be a shift, because that's the world we already exist in. And we're trying to get outside of that. We're trying to get to the transformation, the breakthrough that's available beyond that. So that's how it showed up with her, and how it showed up with AC, accomplishment coaching, is often we would like, here's a simple example where I was leading something at the front of the room, and I'd been working on a distinction of my own. And so as I was leading, I was like, oh, here's a time for me to bring that distinction. I think it would help explain this. And so I did that. The 24 people I was leading followed along with me. I explained it great because, I'm great. And and then at the end of that, one of the leaders came in, and then she saw the board. She was like, "Oh, what's that other stuff on the board there?" This is during a break, and I was like, "Oh, it was like a distinction I've been working on. It just seemed like it would help." She was like, "Oh, got it." She was very loving, but she said, "Well, so my request would be really sit in the work you're leading here, like practice teaching our work, and like bring your distinctions in outside of here, so that you can really become masterful in these distinctions that we're working with here." And you might be able to imagine, I was like, fuck that. Y'all ain't ready for what I have to bring. You guys are tamping me down. You guys are rigid. You guys are stuck in this way of you doing things, and you're not open to like the real leadership, to like exploring, to blowing the roof off of this, to getting outside of the box, blah, 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 blah. So I was very righteous about that. Righteous just meaning I was right. I was holding that my position was the right one. I'm right that you guys are just not up for this kind of conversation. And and that was really like, that's sticky stuff, because it was so comforting for me to be right about that. It's kind of like, just let me do things my way, ultimately, right? And and so to work with this, I had to bring this to my coach, and be like, oh, they're like doing this, and like they really aren't willing to expand. And the way my coach worked with this was first by allowing space for this. So she was like, okay, well, there's probably some truth there. There's probably a degree to which they are a bit stuck in their ways. They are a bit insistent. And are you interested in like me sharing what I can see for you? I said, yeah, of course. She said, notwithstanding what's going on over there, I notice that for you, Adam, there's a real like stuckness on this. Like there's not a lot of interest or even capacity for you to explore what they might be offering, because you're so dug in about the fact that they're stuck in their old ways and they're blah, blah, blah. So my rightness, my righteousness allowed only two options. The first option was, I'm right, fuck you. Come with me if you like, but otherwise go fuck yourselves. That was the first option. I'm right. And then the second option was effectively, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Beat myself up. And then just kind of like, you're right. And I tolerate it. I guess you're right. That was dumb of me. I'll throw out that idea that I had. I'll never do that ever again. There's no real expansion available from that. I like to think of when we get caught in these contexts, we call them, it's like you're stuck in a wagon rut. And in that wagon rut, you have only two options. You can go forward or backwards. And when you've been going forward for a long time, going backwards feels like a real shift. Oh my God, what a breakthrough. But in fact, it's just the same It's the same direction. There's no real options available. There's just forward or back. And so with my coach, it probably took multiple conversations for me to start to relinquish my hold on being right about this. And that was the work, was for me to let go of what there needed to be done, let go of how wrong they were or how right I was about how wrong they were, and instead just see if I could notice how attached I was to what I was right about. Can I feel my energy like wrapped around this way of being, this story that I have? And that's the hard work, not to get into the content of it, right? To get into the content would be like, here's why they're wrong. Here's all the reasons why what I'm doing is the correct thing. That's getting into the content. My job, through the support of my coach, was to rise up and just notice, oh, wow, look how sticky this is. Look how much I want to grab onto this. Look how much I don't want to let go of this thing I'm right about. So that's largely, well, that's one example of me moving through some of what I was right about. Um, there's like millions of these for me, and they still show up from time to time. Being right about stuff is hard fought ground taken for me because I'm so good at it. I'm so good. Like, you don't want to get into an argument with me about something I feel I'm right about. I'm a lawyer. Like, I'll argue you under the table. Anyone. And so my coaches, the way they've supported me is to to distinguish that with me. They'd be like, Adam, look, I'm not going to try to prove to you that you're wrong or that they're not right, because you'll win at that. And that's what my ego is trying to do. It's trying to get people into this legal battle with me so that then I can prove they're wrong, I'm right, and then they'll acquiesce and go along with me. That's a fool's errand. And so the art of the coach is to stand outside of that and be like, look, see, you're trying to pull me into it. Can you feel that? I'd be like, ah, yeah, maybe a little bit. I really want you to argue with me. And then being like, yeah, totally. So can you breathe? Can you notice that? Can you just allow yourself to see that as it's happening? And if we do that sort of stuff, slowly but surely we can practice not getting drawn into the Venus flytrap of that. And then that allows us to start to to relax and to let it go. And from there, we can start to see all of the millions of possibilities that are available outside of the walls of the wagon rut. So, great question, David. That is an example of me being right. Okay, a little more tea, maybe a little cross-legged position. Who's here? There's three viewers. I know there's three viewers. Who are you? Put name in comment, please. Por favor. ¿Cómo te llamas? That's some Spanish. I'm learning Spanish. One of the things that's super cool about the work I'm doing with ayahuasca, going down to Costa Rica so much, is I'm just immersed amongst Spanish speakers. And so slowly but surely I'm learning Spanish, which is like thrilling because I really love languages. I love being able to speak French, and I love like learning new languages in some ways is like, it's a little bit like what happens when you smoke marijuana. And when we smoke marijuana, our brain pathways kind of open and we start to think a little more laterally. And I find speaking in different languages has a similar effect on the brain. Good morning, Tommy. Nice to see you. Maria, hello. Hola, Maria. Hola. Anyhow, so we're gonna get into polarity, divine polarity, the masculine and the feminine, or as I like to say, the feminine and the masculine. And I like to say the feminine and the masculine because often the feminine must go first. These are two oft misunderstood energies, and they're so important. The understanding of this kind of polarity is so important for what is to come, for what we are seeking to create collectively on the planet. And from our misunderstanding, what we end up doing is like winding ourselves further around the axle. We get further stuck whilst simultaneously believing we're freeing ourselves. It's not a problem. It's not bad. It's just the nature of what's happening. And so that's why I think this is really, really valuable territory for us to tread, and it can be challenging. So if you listening now, if you're listening after the fact, and you have any sort of like frustration or objection or anything, just any reaction to anything that I'm sharing, please share that, because that's how we work through this stuff. We don't create transformation just by listening to some jerk talk about stuff. if you've listened to a lot of podcasts or read a lot of great books, you probably have a lot of good ideas, but you've probably noticed at the same time your life has not radically transformed. It might have changed for the better, but it's not radically transformed. And that's because transformation is it's a dialogue. It requires giving and taking as opposed to just receiving. So, um, the teachers I work with use alpha and omega to refer to these energies, alpha being the masculine energy, omega being the feminine energy. And these are like, they're not gendered in the sense of like man, woman kind of, that's not really what we're using to describe them. They're more like primordial or even pre-primordial energies. They're like the fundamental polarity that exists in the universe. If everything was, it's sort of like matter and energy, or like matter and nothingness. If the whole world was matter, there would be no differentiation. It would just be all one big block. And if the whole world was void, if the entire universe was nothing, then it would just be one flat plane of nothing. And so it's the tension, it's the polarity between these two states of nothingness and of matter that creates something. Creation is a function of this polarity. Yin Yang, Maria is saying, yes, absolutely. Yin Yang is like another example of this polarity. And so this polarity we're talking about, we're going to talk in the context of masculine and feminine, but like this polarity has been spoken to and studied and articulated and expounded upon for millennia and millennia, by people far smarter than I am. So you guys are getting kind of like the cheap version. You're getting the McDonald's version of this. So we have these two divine qualities of energy. The masculine energy is that of what we could call resting consciousness. It's the witness, it's stillness, it's the void. It's also purposeful and linear and driven, and you could say penetrative. And it can be penetrative any number of ways. There is a penetrative quality of someone sitting in stillness and witnessing you through their eyes. That is very penetrative. People often don't understand this. People are like, huh, why do people like people find me too intense? And it's because it might be because you hold eye contact so powerfully. So you're really embodying that masculine energy, but that's a lot. We need to learn. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but we need to learn the art of softening, of maybe moving our gaze so that people aren't held to quite the same extent. So that's the masculine energy: linear, purposeful, resting, void, nothingness, consciousness, penetrative, etc. The feminine energy is the energy of creation and destruction. It is the energy of life. And I've heard some teachers call it love life energy, the energy of all that is. The feminine energy expands into the void. So the masculine energy holds the container, and then the feminine energy pours itself into that. So the feminine energy is stars being born and being blown apart in supernovas. It's life and it's death. Feminine energy is matter and energy and all of the states of matter. Here are some other states of matter. Here's one state of matter. Here's another state of matter. Here's another one right here. All of these are states of matter. Clapping my hands is an energetic resonance in the universe. That's feminine energy too. And again, remember, without the masculine energy, without the void to hold this, there wouldn't be the feminine, there wouldn't be that stuff. Matter can only exist when there's a void in which it can be placed. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be able to distinguish these things. We'd just be like, yeah, the universe is one big giant brick or whatever, matter blob. So that's how we begin this journey. These energies are universal. You can see them everywhere. And now we can bring them all the way home to us as humans. So one of the places people first get caught in this conversation is they hear masculine and feminine, and we get hooked into our wounding, our collective wounding around the patriarchy, around how the masculine energy has wounded ourselves, and unconsciously how the feminine energy has wounded ourselves. That's a little more nuanced. We're not going to go there yet. We're not talking about that. So when I talk about the feminine energy doing blah, 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 I'm not saying women do this. That being said, every one of us has polarity inside of us. Every one of us has masculine and feminine energy constantly at live, constantly in polarity and tension with ourselves. And we also embody a certain quantity of each of these energies. Typically, people that are men, identify as men, have a lot of masculine energy. They have the majority of their energy is masculine in nature. And typically, people, individuals that identify as women, have a lot of feminine energy. That's just the way it is. And what that means is that our natural state, left to our own devices, will be more towards that particular quality of energy. So for me, naturally, I like to I'm drawn to productivity, I'm drawn to video games, I'm drawn to like making stuff happen in my life, and I'm drawn to stillness. I'm drawn to meditation. I'm drawn to whatever. And if you hear this and you're like, "Well, I feel feminine, but I also like meditation." That's fine because remember these energies exist with you in a balance. So it's not that if you're someone who has more of a particular kind of energy, you're not drawn to those other sides. There's a lot of stuff that I also love a lot. Like I love dancing. That's a very feminine expression. Interestingly, the types and styles of dancing are quite masculine in their energetic sort of expression, but the underlying art of dancing, the underlying art of moving my body and like creating in the world that way is very feminine. So all of us have sort of like a draw in particular directions. And some people have a very balanced set of this kind of energy inside of them. So some people you'll notice are very like they're almost androgynous or they relate to themselves as like non-gendered. And that's often because for them, there's no pull in either of these directions. Okay, that sounds pretty good so far. There's a whopping 3 people watching. If any of you guys have, you can help me, which is like questions, curiosities, something you're noticing, thoughts, objections. Hey, what about this though? Anything along those lines as I'm speaking, super helpful to me. Soup's helpful. So we can make this dialogic. And I mostly just want to use that word. But anything you've got that's coming up, what's up, Hobbs? Nice to see you. Anything you've got that's coming up around these qualities of masculine and feminine, please put them in the chat so that we can work with that. We can draw that out. We can create something. So all of us have these qualities, these 2 energies inside of us, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and we tend to have a balance in one direction or the other. So from there, let's start to talk about how this shows up in romantic relationship. Anytime you're in partnership with another individual, there's going to be a degree of these energies at play, but that's a great question, Michelle. Michelle says, what do you think the energetic is as children? So I would say that we come onto this planet, like we are born with a particular kind of energetic resonance. So I came onto this planet with a lot of masculine energy. I don't think this is something we learn. We can be trained out of our natural resonance. Just like we come onto this planet like with all of these beautiful qualities, like brilliance, and then we get trained out of it. We learn, oh, that's not acceptable. And so I'm going to start showing up like dumb around these people because it makes them like me more. It's not my natural state. I just train myself into that state. So many of us, whilst we might be a very masculine kind of person, individual, the energy we have inside of us is very masculine, have learned to become very feminine. And I'm going to talk about that in a sec, how we do that in society, because what we've done societally is we've feminized men and we've masculinized women. And what that ends up doing is that we're kind of in this neutral middle. So we're in relationships with each other neutral. There's not a lot of spark. We'll come to that. So what happens is we get into relationship with each other and we've got all of the baggage of our past, all of the baggage of our parents, all of the baggage of society, all of the cultural wounding that exists that we're all collectively healing, whether we know it or not. And all of that has us try to show up particular ways. And on top of everything I just said, there's little to no teaching about this stuff. That's not entirely true. There's a fuck ton of it. There's like tantric teaching, there's sacred yoga teaching, there's sacred intimacy teaching, there's teachings on masculine and feminine and teachers that are masterful in this work. and yet it's a bit murky and it's not mainstream, and it can be hard to sift through the nonsense to find the signal. There's a lot of noise out there too. There's a lot of people that are like, I'm just starting to teach about this. And it's like, have you worked with any teachers? Nope, I'm just getting downloads from God. Okay, could you ask God if maybe he could put a teacher in front of you? Could you do that for Adam? So that was funny to me. So we get into relationship and we tend to end up in one of three states with our partner. Initially, before any of this happens, we are hormonally charged. We are chemically aided by our bodies. We haven't yet seen this person naked. We're excited. We're like we're in heat in a manner of speaking, and we cannot wait to fuck them. And so there is natural spark. The highest expression of polarity, I need to put this in before I go much further, is fuck, cosmic fuck. And and all of the beauty and sacredness that that entails, along with all of the dirtiness and everything else, the naughtiness, all of what comes with it. But in the early days of a relationship, you don't have to worry about that. It's free for 3 to 6 months, typically. Sometimes it lasts longer, sometimes it lasts shorter, but 3 to 6 months on average, that's there for free. We don't have to worry about it. And so we just hook up, we have sex, we make love, we discover, we revel in each other's like being. It's awesome. All of us love that. And then over time, that starts to fade. We start to enter into a level of comfort with one another. And what happens at that point is we start to settle into our kind of default polarity patterns. So what happens then is we end up in one of three states typically with each other. The first is an alpha alpha state. That's both of us embodying the masculine energy. So this can look like two partners, two romantically related people launching a business together. And what they do is they're very purpose driven. So they're working together. They're sitting down. They're like making things happen. They're working on their shared vision. They're taking steps. They're in action. It's awesome. It's like two business partners. You can see this in the world all the time. This is largely what the CEO, the corporate executive leadership, the entrepreneurial world looks like, the business world. The business world looks like alpha alpha. At this point, some people will say, well, that's wrong. We should bring omega. We should bring feminine energy into the business world. And it's fine to feel that way. It's just, it's actually not what's best suited when what we're trying to do is create something from purpose. It's not that there's not a time and place for omega, for feminine. It's just that that's like trying to take a screwdriver and be like, we always use hammers to hit these nails in. We should use screwdrivers. We could, it's just not what a screwdriver's for. So it's important here. Our wounding has us reach for like it's sort of like trying to fabricate diversity. We try to sometimes shoehorn stuff in response to our wound, even though that's not actually what's going to serve. So it can be valuable at this point to practice, if you notice that showing up for you, to set that aside and just consider like the alpha energy is best served when it's doing something purposeful towards an end. Now there's a caveat, which is what that purpose, like what determines that purpose, should probably be granted to us through the feminine. Sort of like you want your navigator of your boat to be navigating the boat when you're going through the shallows and the rapids, but you want your captain to be setting your course. So that's the caveat. That's for those of you that are like, but Adam, you. So often the business world, the world of entrepreneurial, the world of creating stuff, that's alpha. And so in the boardrooms, you have a lot of alpha, 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 alpha. It's all people in alpha. It would be rare that someone would go up into a business meeting and be like, I'm just feeling really sad right now. And I don't really know where to go with that. And I'm not sure. I just don't want to go anywhere. And I just want you guys to hold me in my heart. That would be ridiculous. I mean, not ridiculous, but like ridiculous, right? It just wouldn't work and it wouldn't be received very well. So, and that's not to cut that part of the conversation off, but rather alpha is the energy of what we're talking about. And so when you're in relationship with someone and you're both in alpha, you are likely both really moving something forward. You're engaged with something, and that can be thrilling. That can be really, really great. However, there's no fuck generated from that. There is no cosmic fuck. There is no spark from alpha and alpha. because you are in resonance with each other rather than in polarity with one another. So that's the first state of relatability, of romantic relationship, of kind of um, dynamic where you can find yourself with your romantic partners. The second state is omega omega. So this is where both partners are in their feminine. So maybe the one partner's had a tough day at work and comes home and is just like, I'm exhausted and I feel like a failure. And what's there for them to do is just share their heart, not so as to get somewhere, but just to share their heart, just to allow themselves to be expressed as themselves. And the other partner in that situation might like just really listen, like, stroke their hair and like, oh, I really understand. I'm so sorry, and just love them. So that is omega omega energy. That is typically like you could think of it like the energy of the mother to the child. It's a loving, mothering kind of energy. It's very soft and gentle. It is not trying to get us anywhere. It is simply being with us exactly as we are and loving each other. And so this typically, historically, has been more the realm of when women get together. When men get together, they build a garage, they do whatever because they're more embodied in the alpha energy. And when women get together, they just hear each other, they listen to each other, they connect with each other. Again, I'm not saying it has to be about women. I'm saying historically, that's how this energy would be found and seen and experienced. Again, when you're engaged with this with a partner, it's beautiful. It's profound. It's very important. And what's happening is you're in resonance with each other as opposed to polarity. And so when you have two partners in Omega all the time, there's no polarity. So I've heard from many of my friends who are lesbians that there is like a concept in the lesbian community called, I think it's called like bed death or something, which is that like lesbian partners get together and it's hot at first, but then it slowly becomes like a loving, caring relationship and the sex starts to die out. It's quite common. And this would be a symptom of that, of what I've just described, is you have omega and omega energy together. Now, this isn't always the way because sometimes in partnerships, you end up with one woman or one man in same-sex partnerships who has more of the feminine energy and one who has more of the masculine energy, and then you have that polarity. But you can get two feminine partners, and then there's resonance but not polarity. And so without the polarity and without the hormonal link at the start, it all starts to fade away. It's very loving, it's very nice, it's very nurturing, but there's no fuck. The third state that we can find ourselves in down this path is the state of polarity. It's alpha and omega, or omega and alpha. And this is the state where one partner is driven and focused on a purpose, and then the other partner is loving and nurturing and like an expression of love. This third state has a few problems to it. The first one is that historically we've not been artful in this. What I mean by that is the possibility of this kind of polarity and this kind of relationship has been distorted so that it's looked like the man goes to work and does all the stuff, and the woman is a kept woman at home, and she just makes dinner and then puts on makeup for him and makes him happy, and discrepancies in pay, and like then the guy goes and cheats on her, and like just all of this mess, right? That's there. So in response to that wounding, we've one kind of made this type of polarity wrong, and instead what we seek to do is create sameness. We are engaged right now. We're kind of coming out of this collectively, but there's a lot of heavy lifting still to be done. But a lot of what we're currently engaged with in the realm of polarity is creating neutrality, creating sameness with one another, complete equality. And that would be like saying all poles on a battery must be the same because then there will be equality. You can do that, but you'll just end up with a bunch of inert batteries. They're not going to do much for you. If we turn everyone into a positive pole on a battery or everyone into a negative pole on a battery, we're going to be a bit stuck. And so in the wounding, the historical wounding and the lack of art we have around this, we're coming into some problems with that. So that's the first thing to say about this state of relating, this alpha and omega. The next thing to say is that there's because of that wounding, we don't have a lot of good teachings around this. And because there's not a lot of teaching, we don't have a very good cultural understanding or appreciation for or learning of how to work in this area. When couples do get together with this high degree of polarity, they like explode each other. They blow each other apart. So these are those sort of couples where they like argue explosively and then fuck explosively. And it's just like there's so much energy and they don't have any art in their ability to hold or manage or be with it that it just explodes. And so they come together, there's a lot of dysfunction, and then they fly off into the ether until they find their next partner. The sex is great, but everything else is kind of a mess. And this is why sometimes people are like, man, I don't understand why the sex is so good with that wackadoodle partner that I have. Like, what's the deal? The deal is probably you had a tremendous amount of polarity with them, but then weren't able to work inside of that polarity because you've never been taught. So what you were experiencing was the thrill of polarity, but you weren't able to convert that to transmute that and to work with it so that it could be something that you held. So like the metaphor I like to think of it is like a battery's contained. It has a container and a setup such that that polarity can exist without exploding. Whereas this sort of third state I'm talking about where we don't have much artistry is a little bit like just having like a barrel of gunpowder and like a match that's burning down. And it's just a matter of time before it blows itself apart because there's no container, there's no art to hold it. So I'm just going to read what y'all wrote here and then we'll carry on here. So Michelle's saying, yes, I feel like growing up being in the feminine was the most unsafe place to be ever. So I shut that shit down. And it's so scary to be in the practice of cultivating that more in my adulthood. Hell yes, Michelle. Thank you for saying that. So the feminine is the courageous energy. It is so courageous to be the feminine because that is, again, the energy of going first, is the energy of creation. It is the energy of putting yourself out there without any guarantee you'll be caught or held. And because we are in a state of maturation spiritually, because we are not yet already arrived, when women show up fully embodied in their, first of all, when a woman shows up fully embodied in the feminine energy, it is intoxicating. Men are, the masculine is almost powerless. It requires an incredibly deep man to be able to stay in stillness and simply witness the feminine. The feminine is so divinely powerful, and women embodied in this quality are so attractive, so attractive. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what their looks are. It doesn't matter how they do their hair, or whether they're a man. I was at when I was at ceremony the other time. I was with someone, a gay man who was like very embodied in his feminine energy, and I was like, holy crap, I am drawn to this individual. I am a staunchly heterosexual dude. I love myself some women, but I was like, damn, I'm really drawn to this guy. And so that's the potency of the feminine energy. It's also part of what's frightening, I think, for right wing or whatever kind of like heavily staunchly conservative kind of rigid individuals is like that's part of what makes gayness so frightening for them is that we can feel the power of the feminine pulling at us, however it's being expressed. So, Michelle, you're absolutely right. It's very unsafe growing up because we don't have a lot of art. We aren't deep in our practice with this work. In fact, we're very young spiritually, more so in the West than anywhere else. And consequently, when a woman embodies her feminine, it opens the doors for her to be taken advantage of. This isn't right. This isn't like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not even acceptable. I don't know what the right word is. It's just that's part of what we're healing through. We're learning to heal through this and we're learning to deepen. And until we can deepen into this, it's edgy. So, by the same token, if I went out into the world and just embodied the depth of the masculinity that I have worked to cultivate and like just stood and bore witness to people, they would find that really like energizing and polarizing, but also intimidating because there's like a level at which I can bring my consciousness to bear on someone that's very penetrative, and they would find it almost like um, well, inappropriate more so than anything else. So we have to learn this art. Thanks for that, Michelle. That's really great. Maria, thank you for telling me how you pronounce your name. So Maria's saying, one of my favorite takes on the optimal relationship between these energies within us as well as between us is tasking the masculine with building structures that allow the feminine to flow in alignment with their values and goals. Yes, indeed. So we'll come to that, but absolutely, I'm with you. So we have these three sort of states that relationships exist in, and none of them is right or wrong. And there are times and places for each of those. So Bay and I are in business together. We create a lot together. And when we're doing that, we want to be an alpha alpha. That's important. We're not seeking to polarize each other to create cosmic fuck. We're seeking to create the next iteration of the forge. We're seeking to get clear on how we can deepen the transformation we're causing in the world. We are aligned on purpose and we are building a garage together. And there's other times when I or Bay just needs to be held and felt and seen and heard and loved. And so in those times, and not just those things, but like empathetically experienced. So like I don't just want Bay to witness me as my sadness. I want her to be in it with me. I want her to somehow like be able to empathetically feel that in her body and let her that sadness flow over her. So there's times and places for these things. What we need to start doing culturally, not need, but like what's available for us to start doing is one, to start to give ourselves permission to recognize these energies. So that's the first problem is because we are so wounded and still healing from toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. Toxic femininity would be like toxic receptivity and surrender. It would be, and then it would also be the flip side, like emasculating. For those of you that want a book on this that's really potent for women, it'd be The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. It is such a phenomenal book. And one of the things she talks about in that book is how what women have learned to do is because there's no blame, right? This isn't, well, men made this happen. We all made this happen. There's a collective wounding. Because the masculine has been not safe, what women, and because women are intimidated by the masculine, what they've learned to do is emasculate men, cut their nuts off, effectively, cut their feet out from under them. And when a man becomes emasculated, the only thing left for him to do is to objectify a woman. And so one leads to the other, leads to the other. Because once a man starts to objectify a woman, what's a woman going to do? Well, masculinity is unsafe. So she's going to further emasculate him. So highly recommend that book, The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. The point here is we need to kind of set down our wounding or love it or breathe into it to the extent we can. And for some people, you know, if you've got sexual abuse or you're a victim of something along those lines, this isn't me saying just step over that. Get the support necessary to do that. But collectively, what there is for us to do is to start to move through that wounding so we can begin to cherish the distinction between these two energies and cherish those distinctions alive in ourselves and alive in other individuals. So that's the first step. From our wounding, what's currently happening is we are seeking sameness. We are seeking complete and total equality. We are seeking to remove the concepts of gender entirely, to have that be an entirely social construct, meaning sort of the idea like as a child comes out of the womb, if you didn't put anything in front of it, it would be 100% a coin toss whether the child would reach for a Barbie or reach for a Tonka truck. I would assert that's not the case. We're never going to be able to run that experiment, but the practice is to practice trusting in these energies. And so we have to let go of that wound a little bit to begin to like, okay, there's an opportunity for me to really embody that which is most natural for myself and to do the same with my partner. And from there, I can start to create polarity with him, her, it, they, whatever. So that's the first thing we have to do is to learn to start to allow this to be on the table. And we can't force that on anyone. If people are currently in the state where they're like pushing towards neutrality out of their own wounding, then all there is for us to do is bring love there. This isn't the conversation for them yet. That's okay. So that's how we move towards this collectively. We love people exactly where they are. We don't make anyone wrong for where they are, and we start to choose into this teaching, this sort of recognition of polarity. My forearm looks really nice there. Good looking forearm. Go at him. Okay, I'm going to make that gesture a lot more now that I've seen that. So that's the first thing we have to do. The second thing we want to start to do is ask ourselves in our relationship, what am I seeking to create? What do I want more of? Am I in that kind of relationship that's blowing itself apart? And maybe what there is for me to do is to practice creating more resonance with my partner. Or perhaps you're more like the relationship Bay and I have had for many, many years, where it's like tons of resonance, but not a lot of polarity. And relationships that have thriving, exciting, erotic sex lives over the long term, they're doing that through polarity. That is how that magic is created. It is possible to create an amazing, ongoing, and in fact, increasing sex life with your partner, but it doesn't happen by magic. It doesn't happen just by like wishing for it or hoping for it or trying to force it or like maybe if we watch porn together, you can do that. But what really creates that spark is when you are practicing polarity with one another. I'm just going to read what you wrote, Lori, and then I'll continue. Lori writes, the collapse of my 30-year marriage created an environment in which I had to take control of my life. No one was there for me. I definitely grew into my masculine energy, but now that I'm so self-reliant, how do I find my feminine energy again? That is such a beautiful share, Lori, and it is such a beautiful question. So first, I want to honor you for having to do that. And that's one of the things that's so important for women is the ability to cultivate their masculine. That part of our energy that is like, I can do this on my own. That is really, really important. And part of the way so much damage is caused is because we all get these crazy mixed signals, right? Like women are meant to like be chaste and virgin and proper, but also a hot slut in the bedroom. And like, what the fuck? How do you do that? And men are meant to be like these bulls, these stags that can like, you know, fuck the world open, but at the same time be like totally proper and keep their eyes always level and never be inappropriate. Inappropriate's not the right word because I'm not suggesting the thing to do is become inappropriate, but rather that we're just given these mixed messages that's so challenging. And so, Lori, I honor you and cherish you for learning first that difficult, challenging lesson. How do I become myself? How do I become more engaged in my masculine? And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can start to practice with this. So, like, one of the best ways always is to begin to work with teachers that can support us, that can hold a container where we can begin to like practice this art. And ultimately, what we're talking about here is a yogic practice. A yogic practice meaning it's something we perform asanas that rather than this being like an intellectual exercise of figuring out something, we perform an asana that takes us into the practice of doing that thing in the moment. So one asana that can be really potent, really beautiful for people that want to get more in touch with their feminine, well, I'll give you two. So the first one is just ecstatic dance. And that can be done by yourself at home. If you heard that and you're like, fuck, I don't want to go with those weirdos over at that place that I know that they go, that's fine. You can do it at home. So the way you do that is you just put on a song you really love and you let your body move itself. You plug into the music and you shut your mind off to the best of your ability. And this might be a practice. It might be hard at first, but begin allowing your body to move in the way that feels good. Letting your body move in the way that feels good is highly feminine practice. When we are in the practice of embodying the feminine, we are letting the mind go. The feminine descends into the current moment. So when someone is, that's why it's so scary. When someone is embodying the feminine, they're letting go of knowing, of seeing what's to come, what's to happen, what happened yesterday, and what might happen tomorrow. All of that is being set aside. And instead, all there is what is in this present moment. And so, one thing I want to caveat here is when people hear ecstatic dance, they think joy, but ecstasy is all of it. So, as you dance, you might start to feel anger, or you might start to feel grief, or you might start to feel aroused, or you might start to feel terror. And what there is to do is to embody that in your dance. So you can practice that at home. That can be a great practice, like 5 minutes every day. Or you can go to like five, what do they call them? Five rhythms dancing or ecstatic dancing. Any of these sort of things provide a great place to practice the feminine energy. The other practice that can begin to support someone that wants to deepen into their feminine expression is to just do some what you call what's the name of this? Oh, nonlinear movement. And so again, put on some music. You can even look on YouTube nonlinear movement playlists. And what you're doing in a nonlinear movement practice is just you start lying down and then you are letting your body like guide you as to what movement there is to take. And typically, in typical nonlinear movement practice, you clench wherever there is energy and then you release it. And the only practice here is to let your body guide you to the next piece of movement and to not stop moving. So what these do is they really have you descend into the body and let the body guide you. One teacher of mine once said that your relationship to your body, and this is especially true for females, for women, your relationship to your body is your relationship to the feminine. So however you feel about your body, that's also how you feel about the energy of the divine feminine. Great question, Laurie. So we want to make sure that we're getting clear, like what is the way of relatability? What is the way I'm connecting with my partner that is going to serve what I want to create? And when people want to create more polarity, that's often best done in containers. This comes to what Maria said, the masculine building structures that allow the feminine to flow in alignment with their goals and their values. So the simplest way to do this, thank you, Lori, I honor you, is a morning practice with your partner. And a morning practice is a container. It's a container in which polarity can be held. So typically, those couples I described that like come together and explode, there's no container for their practice of polarity. So it's sort of just like having a match and gasoline all over the place and lighting it and throwing the match at it and like, I don't know, let's see what happens. And sometimes it's great and other times you blow your living room out. You're like, shit, that didn't work. Oh, but that one was good. So to really create polarity, we want to create a container for it, a safe space in which both partners are in recognition of what's to be created. And then there's a whole bunch of asanas to support this. I don't want to go into too many of them because the point of this here today is not to give a bunch of directions. It's rather to open the floor to start to create an understanding of these energies so that we can at least hold them in our mind without trying to push them down or change them, without being like, that's bad because he's saying that men need to be a certain way and women need to be a certain way and we shouldn't do that and there's equality for all and blah, blah, blah. As soon as we get into that, there's no hope of creating polarity. Polarity is out the window. By the way, this is why so much like birth rates are going down, because historically there was a lot of toxicity in how we, or a better term than toxicity would be youth. There was a lot of youthfulness in how we practice these things, but there was polarity. So there was harm caused just like we all cause harm when we're young. We're naive. We're kind of foolish. We're cocksure, right? But there was more fuck because there's more polarity. And now as we collectively move, we're moving out of that polarity. We'll move back into it. That's the work we're undertaking collectively. But currently, we've moved towards a more neutral stance. So what we've done is we've brought women into a more masculine energy because they want to work. They want to create results too, and that's totally fine. And remember that the alpha energy is best served doing that work. But the trouble is that there's no awareness of what's happening. There's no knowledge of this. And so that alpha energy is brought home. And at the same time, we are feminizing most male practitioners, most humans. Practitioner, a fancy way to say that. And so we have men that are working really hard out of the goodness of their heart to be a more loving companion, to understand things more. And that's important too. But what is happening for those masculine practitioners is that they are moving into a state of feeling their partner. So they are descending into the moment. They are setting aside all of what they see and instead embodying a feminine state of being with their partner, instead of staying in a more alpha state, which would be sort of like seeing, witnessing, staying open in your channels, but witnessing and being unmoving. There's a nuance there that I'm going to speak to. But as a result, sexes, both partners, both sexes have come to this neutral middle. And what we have is a lot of resonance again, a lot of like safety, not a lot of like damage, not a lot of destruction, but also just not much fuck. There's not much thrill. There's not much spark. And so as a result, the relational epidemic that you could say is like the millennials, the Gen Xers, or whatever, I don't know the generation names, but like the millennials and so on and so forth are kind of struggling with is they come together, things are exciting, and then they divorce, they go away, and then they come together again. And what's happening is they're chasing to some extent that 3 to 6 month window of like hormonal excitement, and then it fades away. And the reason that's happening is because we are not aware of what's possible. We are not aware of this, of the magic that's available to us through polarity work. So when we're coming together to practice polarity, we want to create a safe container. We want to create something like a practice time, 30 minutes to sit with our partner. And I'm going to offer like a very simple asana that Bay and I work with a lot and that our teachers have provided us. Our teachers are Justin Patrick Pierce and London Angel Winters. And I've worked with other teachers as well in the past, John Wineland to name one, and there's a few others that I won't get into because less time with them. But um, in this practice, what you are doing is starting at the most basic level of, of creating polarity. So often, because we have so much baggage and fear and stuff, energy wrapped up around sex, we want to jump straight to that. We want to go to like, well, but I want to create the fuck, so how do I do that? Like, get me there right away. But that won't work because you're stepping over all of the organic stuff that has to happen first. So creating polarity is a bottom up practice. It's an organically grown practice. So a half hour timer, and the first 10 minutes, what you would do is you would sit in front of your partner, and the man or the masculine partner, however you want to kind of hold it, and the feminine partner sit across from each other, and you spend those 10 minutes gazing into each other's eyes. And there's only one thing that is happening. There's many things that are happening, but there's one core thing, which is that the masculine partner is breathing. The masculine partner is guiding the breath of the two of you, and the feminine partner is practicing receiving that breath. So deep breath in, deep breath out. And the man is breathing into their, I'm going to say man now, but you could, the alpha partner, the masculine partner, if it's two men, whichever partner is kind of holding more of the masculine pole. If it's two women, whichever partner is holding the more masculine pole. If it's two androgynous individuals that are both ice cream cones, it's whichever ice cream cone identifies as the more masculine, the one that's going to hold the masculine energy. It's all good. And so the masculine partner is holding the breath. And the breath is the container in which the feminine can be expressed. So the masculine is being, to some extent, penetrative with their breath. They're not forcing their breath into their partner, but at the same time, they are not bringing it back. They are breathing the partner and themselves. And the feminine partner for these 10 minutes is practicing receiving that breath, letting the man's breath be the guide for her breath. So before we go any further, that in itself can be a very profound, very confronting practice. For people that have come through a lot of trauma, such as my beautiful queen of a wife, the notion of her surrendering to me, period, full stop, is very edgy. There's been a lot of stuff for us to heal together to move through that. These days, she really like, there's a lot of pleasure available for us in her receiving my breath, her surrendering to that. But it's taken forever because for her, surrender was not safe. And so what's beautiful about this is that this practice alone can start to heal. And like every healing journey, it's going to be bumpy as you start. And so if you sit down with your partner and you start to practice this, you might find like, fuck, they're not doing it. They're not doing it right. They're not willing to. And the reason for that is because you are coming up against the first thing to heal. There was something in the way of them trusting you. There was something in the way of them surrendering to you. And so there's this practice can go far deeper, right? We can start to work with tools like, here's what I would need to surrender. Here's what I would need more of from you to receive your breath. Here's what I would need more of from you to continue to breathe us. I would need you to like show me in your eyes that you're receiving my breath. I would need you to like turn your head back a little bit so I can see you almost allowing my breath into your neck. One of the things I find so fascinating in this practice is that it's hard work for both partners, but in a different way. So Bay will often be frustrated. She'll be like, Well, Adam doesn't have to do anything. He just sits there stoically and breathes. And then our partner's like, do you want, or not our partners, our teachers are like, well, babe, do you want to just practice breathing Adam for 10 minutes? Like, do you want to give that a go? And she's like, no, because breathing is hard work, especially when my partner is not like, you will be amazed at how long 10 minutes is if your partner is not receiving your breath and you are trying to generate breath for both of you. So both partners are doing hard work. So that's the first 10 minutes is just gazing into each other's left eye, holding that eye contact. The masculine partner breathes for both partners and the feminine partner surrenders and receives it. It's just a 20-minute practice, sorry, not a 30-minute practice. The second 10 minutes is the masculine partner uses the sentence stem I see, and the feminine partner uses the sentence stem I feel. And so you just go back and forth with this. The feminine partner is sharing I feel sad. And all that the feminine partner is doing is sharing her heart. She is an expression of love. To share our heart, especially in a container like this, is an expression of love. And what you'll notice, and then the masculine partner is an expression of consciousness. I see. Here's what I notice. So when this is happening, you'll notice in that language, which is brilliant language by my teachers, the masculine partner, the attention is entirely over there on the feminine. That is the nature of the masculine at its most embodied, is to be here, free of self, and to witness fully the feminine. And the feminine partner's energy is entirely on her own experience. Here's what I feel. And as we practice this, sometimes Bail will be like, I feel your disappointment. There's nothing wrong with that, but what's happened is she's started to become alpha. She is coming out of herself and coming over there and putting her attention on me. So these are very subtle things, right? We are in the act together, Bay and I, of learning how to hold polarity. Because it's very tempting based on all of what I've shared about how the world is to like come back to that neutral middle. We're all so neutralized and like pushed towards this place that it's easy to come out over to the other side. And it's very edgy. We don't appreciate how edgy it is for someone to just share their heart with us, especially us men, especially those masculine practitioners of us. We don't have any real understanding or appreciation for just how. I'm going to come to your question in a sec, Drew, and Michelle's response. It's a great question. And so this asana, again, is so potent. There is so much magic and medicine available in this because you will discover where you guys get stuck. And in practicing like this, you won't get it right. One of the things I've had to learn is like I would often share I see in such a way that it would be like a criticism. It would land as a criticism, regardless of my intention. I see you're closing your heart. And be like, I feel upset. I see you're making yourself wrong for what I said. It's very hard, right? Like rough. And I've had to learn in my practice as I've deepened with this. If that's where you're starting, that's profound. That's beautiful. You don't have to make yourself wrong for that or feel you have to be somewhere else. That's exactly where you have to be. But over time, as my practice has deepened and I've been supported with this and continue to work in this art, what I've learned is how can I share the truth that I see, but in a way that opens my partner rather than closes her? And that's how we start to learn to create art with our polarity. This is what's missing from those couples I described that are often caught in this alpha omega where they're blowing each other apart, is that they've got polarity, but there's not a lot of art. And so like the one partner saying something and it's just devastating the other partner, and the other partner's like, fuck you, and then that rage sort of finds its way into fuck, and then they have sex, and then they're fuck you, and they blow each other back to the other sides of the condo and wreck their kitchen, and like just on and on and on. So as we create the art, we learn how to like honor the truth that's there, but at the same time do so in a way that opens the moment with our partner. So that's a very simple practice. 20 minutes, 10 minutes of breath, and all that's happening is the masculine partner is embodying the masculine and the feminine partner is embodying the feminine solely through the use of breath. And then you're rising up to the next level. You're layering on top of that, masculine partner being the conscious witness and the feminine partner being the expression of all that's going on in this moment. And that's like, as you layer on top of this, that's cosmic fuck. There is sex available in those moments. It's quite remarkable. As you deepen in your practice of this kind of sacred art, you discover how much eroticism is available just in the breath. just in the witness. Because what happens is as you hold these poles, a real spark gets created, a gravity that wants to pull you together. And as you maintain your practice and hold these at like distance, it becomes more and more exciting. One of the things my teacher shared with me is like working with the art of asking for what we want. So like, I want you to touch my hair. And as soon as we hear our partner say that, what's the first thing you usually want to do? If you're like me, touch their hair. We jump straight to it. But that doesn't create polarity. Polarity is created when my partner says, I want you to stroke my hair. And then I stay in eye contact with her and I continue to breathe us. And I know that I'm going to do that. And she knows that I'm going to do that. And there's this moment of tension where it's like, is he going to do it? Come on, do it, do it, do it. Those are the moments that polarity allows for us to create. So that's the possibility in all relationships if we're willing to start to do this challenging but healing work of working through polarity, of learning to manage these energies. So that that is part of what's available as we collectively heal. That's on the horizon. Collectively, we are working towards this kind of art. We are slowly but surely drawing that in. It takes time. There's so much healing we have to do. And there's so much learning and there's so much like of a willingness to let people be wounded and let them have their process. Like from this side where the polarity is available, it's really easy to be like, dude, y'all got to get over here. Stop fucking around over there. That's nuts. This is way better. But that never works. We have to let people be in their process. So this is just a sign of things to come. This is what I want to share with you ultimately from this is like, this is some of the possibility that's awakening in the world. It is pretty cool. Maria says, this is amazing. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's so great. It's really, really, really beautiful. It's worth every step of the way. And Lori, you're saying this is profoundly beautiful. Thank you for your teaching today. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for your contribution. And then finally, I'll finish here, Drew, saying, what is the practice? I'll finish with your question, Drew, and then I've got a few more questions, then we'll wind down. So Drew's saying, what is the practice of surrendering? And then Michelle says, in response, terrifyingly letting someone lead us. And she said, I added the terrifyingly. So to surrender is the act of typically what we think surrender is, like how we want it to be, is like our circumstances will arrange themselves a particular way and then we will surrender. And it doesn't occur like that in the moment, but that's what we're waiting for. Underneath our consciousness, that's what's happening. We're like, well, I'll surrender, but like I need the music to be quieter. Oh, I would surrender, but And to surrender is to let go of all of our resistance and accept the moment exactly as it is. So when an embodied feminine practitioner is surrendering, she is receiving whatever it is she is getting and all of it. And then she's letting that impact her body, however it is impacting her body. A level of surrender like that, exactly as Michelle put it so artfully, truly is terrifying because there's parts that we're scared to go to. And to really surrender means like, what if this takes me to some pain? I'm not talking about like getting punched. I'm just talking about like, what if I fully surrender and let what the man across from me is sharing completely land in my heart and it obliterates me, it devastates me, right? That's edgy. And so what we do is we protect ourselves. We hold on to like, well, I'll surrender 20, 80, 90%, but I'm going to like retain this part. I'm going to hold on to this part. And so when we're surrendering, this is, by the way, the work of polarity for feminine practitioners, but it's also the work for all of us when we go and work with plant medicine, is to surrender. And oftentimes when people go and work with ayahuasca and other plants, they sit there and they're like, I am so here to do my healing. I'm ready to receive whatever you have to bring me. And then she brings us whatever she brings us. And we're like, can you please hurry up and bring me the thing you're meant to bring me so that I can surrender to it? And she's like, I'm bringing you the thing. We're like, yeah, I got it. But like, can you bring me the other thing that I'm scared to, like, I'm ready for the other thing too. Like bring that and I will surrender. The thing's right here. Surrender to this. What are you feeling? I'm frustrated and bored and it's not working. Surrender to that. Adam, can you sit in being frustrated and bored and that it's not working? Can you give yourself over completely to that? Could you empower a night, 8 hours of you sitting on your mat while you are bored, frustrated, and it's not working? No. Hit me in the head and make me have pain. I will surrender then. And so that's just hilarious, but it's totally what's going on too. That's how this works. And so that's the art of surrender, is to like fully give ourselves over to the moment. And that is the highest expression of the feminine. Again, that's really hard for people. It's really hard for all of us to accept, because we have good cause not to do that. In the past, historically, that's been totally unsafe. And so this is a very high level, it's a high vibration level of practice. It's not something you practice with a guy 2 tables down from you in the coffee shop, like just across from there. You don't just like, I'm just going to fall open and let this man impact me every way. That's probably not safe. And just like it's not appropriate for the masculine practitioner to practice with a woman 2 tables down who like smiled at him and he's like, I'm gonna give this girl some fucking masculine energy. I'm gonna just breathe you in, girl. Inappropriate. Don't do that. Unsafe. Michelle writes here 2 things. One, I'll surrender if everything is perfect and I no one can guarantee my safety. Never how surrender works. And then she also writes, quote unquote, let him lead you badly. She says, I'll never forget when Nathan said that in Peru. I've had that ring through my mind so many times since 2009. I think that's actually a Kendra Kunov quote, I believe. But fair dues, Nathan was the first time you heard that, Michelle. But I've heard Kendra was the first person I ever heard say that, and I've always thought like that's beautiful art, because often what's in the way of good polarity practice is we're waiting for the other person. So the female practitioner is like, well, I want to surrender to him. He's just doing it wrong. And that's conditional surrender, right? There's no surrender in that. To truly surrender, we have to like, you have to let go of that and be like, he's doing his best. He's bringing what he can bring. I'm going to surrender to this. And the flip side is the masculine practitioner is like, what the fuck? I'm not going to fucking do this. She's just being a wall. I'm not going to breathe us. This is exhausting. And yet that's what there is to do, is to breathe your partner, to hold that masculine energy. The masculine requires, at its most embodied state, the masculine requires nothing different from the feminine. It is complete equanimity. It is like how the mountain sits, or the lighthouse, and is ravaged by the ocean. And it doesn't say, look, I'm not going to stick around if you keep hitting me with these fucking waves. Knock it off. Then I will hold the space. No. Masculine energy is to be completely like open, still, and witnessing, regardless of what's showing up. So if what's showing up across the masculine practitioner is like closedness and like resentment and an unwillingness to surrender, then the highest form of masculine practice is to simply love that and bear witness to it and to keep breathing. There's more to that art, but you get the idea. I'm going to read a story many of you have heard me read many times on surrender from this book, Illusions by Richard Bach. So here's the art of surrender. Good angle office returns. That's right, Tara. Your feedback and Michelle's, I'm sold. This is the angle. Okay, here we go. Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil. The current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature, in its own manner, clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go, and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, Fool! Let go, and that current you worship will throw you, tumbled and smashed, across the rocks, and you will die quicker than boredom. That's a reason not to surrender, right? Don't do it. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath, did let go, surrendered, and at once was tumbled and smashed by the current across the rocks. Yet in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, Look, a miracle, a creature like ourselves, and yet he flies. See the Messiah, come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free, if only we dare let go. Our true work is this voyage, this adventure. But they cried all the more, Savior, while continuing to cling to the rocks. And when they looked again, he was gone, and they were left alone, making legends of a savior. So to surrender is to be willing to let ourselves be battered against the rocks, to be smashed, tumbled, and dashed against those rocks and those twigs, to let go of holding on. And that is what women are doing. That when the amazing thing about this, if you consider what it is to practice with the feminine energy, it's ludicrous. It's absolutely insane. And yet that's what they do. And the great irony, I'll finish with the great irony of how things work in relationship is like, I'm going to try to explain this from both sides. Like men are often frustrated that their woman is not more expressed in her feminine. Oh, she's not sexy enough. She's not like, she doesn't dress this way enough. She doesn't do this way enough. And what they're yearning is more of the embodiment of the feminine. Like that part of the feminine that dances and catches our eyes and makes it so we can't put our attention anywhere else. We're transfixed. They're craving for that. But then simultaneous to them complaining about that, they shut down their woman when she brings her fierceness or her sadness or her grief. She starts to complain about work and they're like, what's something positive you can talk about? I don't have time for this, blah, 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 blah. And it's not neither partner is doing anything wrong. It's just that the masculine practitioner in this case doesn't have the capacity to hold the feminine he is yearning for. And so we need to go and practice. We need to go and work with teachers to develop our ability to stay open, to bear witness to everything our woman is bringing us. Behind the space where you can hold that sadness, that grief, and that heart lies all of that other juicy stuff that you want. And then on the other side, women get frustrated that their man isn't like isn't emotive enough, isn't like I want him to feel my heart. I want to be able to share more with them. But then when they do so and the man sits there, they get frustrated that the man's not acting enough. The man's not like emoting enough. I want you to feel like I want to feel your, all of that sort of stuff. And what they don't realize is that they're pulling the masculine energy to the feminine. I want you to be more feminine is really what's happening. In fact, there might be some really deep practice where the man is simply standing and bearing witness, loving you, but simply bearing witness rather than getting engaged in the feminine. So the irony here is both sides, we naturally are kind of pulling ourselves into the center and we're just not aware of it. And so that's why we practice. That's why we work with teachers. That's why we create containers to practice two-bodied meditations, sacred yoga, this sort of stuff with one another. Okay, and talk to Tibby's question and then we'll go from there. So Tibby asks, kind of a wind down. We're not going to be talking about masculine and feminine. That conversation is done. But I should say before I switch off that topic, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, objections, anything that shows up from this topic, I would love to hear them so that we can continue to expand this conversation because that possibility is magnificent, but it only comes from us working with what's there in the moment. And what's there in the moment is whatever you feel as we talk about this. So there's richness there that fertilizes the soil of that possibility I'm talking about. Please share that richness. Okay, Tibby asks, these are a little more logistical questions. He says, Adam, how do you work with essence with new clients? Do you walk them through it when you start working together? So our essence is the light, the beautiful light inside. Who do you think you are is ultimately a book that's pointing you towards people's essence, and it's pointing you to how to lead someone from their essence rather than from the stuff on top of it they're doing. And it's also teaching you how to separate their shadow from the essence so that you can witness their shadow, but then draw back to the essence and see the light there. So Tibby, to your question, the first thing I do with any single one of my clients, anytime we start working together, is I take them through that exercise so that they can get the gift of seeing their light. So that's always the very first thing I do, always, without fail. Second question, he says, who are some great coaches, leaders you follow, feel inspired by, or learn from? So one of my favorite coaches is my coach. She doesn't post much on social media. Her name's Rachel. She's got two last names. I think it's Rachel Finks Parks, or maybe Fink. Rachel Parks is her last name. She's a phenomenal woman and just like an angel and just holds me so beautifully and has taught me so much about how to trust myself by trusting me before I could trust myself. And I just love her so much. And I've been working with her for just shy of a decade. So for me, once I found I mean, I'm not attached to that. I'm completely open. There may be a point where it's just time to move on, but because she continues to grow in her work, our partnership continues to grow. And so there just hasn't been that, I've not had that experience yet where I'm like, I'm ready for someone new. So I just learned so much from her and really appreciate her and love her dearly. Um, but there's not much she posts on social media, a little bit more about her life than anything. I hold Werner Erhard in high regard. Werner Erhard is the founder of EST, and then which stood for Erhard Seminars Training, and then he founded Landmark Forum, which many people know, and now he runs a course called Being a Leader, which happens down in Mexico. And Werner Erhard is the godfather of modern transformation. Landmark Forum took so much of ontological work, the work of your being, and made it accessible to wide numbers of people through Landmark Forum, through EST. He is not without um, scandal's not the right word, but like controversy, I guess, in his background. In the early days, during the Flower Child movement, when he started to create his programs like love and peace and blah 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 blah, he felt what was necessary was to use strong, firm language to cut through that, to like wake people up. And so if you read some of his earlier stuff, or if you've witnessed or even attended his earlier trainings, you might have found him quite harsh, maybe even a little damaging. Some people have said that, very confronting. Um, I've worked with him in Cancun, and I think the man just has a tremendous, beautiful heart, and just I hold him in such high regard. So if you want to learn more about his work, one of the best places you can do that, you can read the book Speaking Being, which is a live transcript of him leading the Landmark Forum, which is fascinating. And you also get some of like, this guy's kind of a fuckface. You might feel that a little bit. That's okay. He's healing in his journey just as all of us are. And what I think is really amazing about his path is his name's not Werner Erhard. That's a made up name because early on in his life, he got married, he had two kids, and then he fucked off. He left his partner, he left his wife, he went to a new city in a new state, he adopted a fake name, and he created a new life there. That's not the amazing part about him, but that's part of his history. What's amazing is that as he went under his own transformation and started to deepen in his work and to learn and learn and learn and learn, he realized, wow, I have to like get a hold of what I've done, meaning I got to be responsible for it. I got to take ownership of it because until I do, it owns me. It's something I have to hide from. And so what he did was he eventually, after doing enough of the work himself, came back and reconciled with his children, his wife. And now they have an amazing relationship. And can you imagine how much stuff there was to move through to go from like these children that were abandoned, left in the dirt by this guy to a rich, thriving, loving relationship with them. That is an incredible amount of work. So his work, I think, is really phenomenal. Um, I really love the leaders and coaches at Accomplishment Coaching because they changed my life. So specifically, Jody Jan Larson, who is my wife's coach, and Christopher McAuliffe, both had a tremendous impact to my life and did so much work to support me. And then uh, other people that played a big role, Carrie Zurier and Denise Yamada, both played big roles. If you look up accomplishment coaching, you can find them. They still lead that work. And then let me see. There's a few others. The the biggest. Oh, there's Justin Patrick Pierce and London Angel Winters. Those are the teachers we do sacred yoga and learn a lot of polarity and divine intimacy from. And then a lot of my teaching these days are from the sacred medicine ayahuasca and the shamans that lead that work. I learn so much every time I go and sit with that medicine. Like she teaches me so much. She helps me heal so much. And the shamans that are holding this space, they've sat with this medicine so long and they always give opening and closing talks. And I learn so much from their work. And I often am like, I'm quite masterful in this work. I hold an MCC designation. There's about 1,500 of us on this planet that hold that designation. I'm not dipping my toe in these waters, and I go and I sit and I listen to these shamans speak, and I'm like, this is some next level shit. These people are coaching and working just at a level so deep, and there's so many layers to their being. It's breathtaking. And so those are teachers I work with a lot these days. which is part of the reason I go down to Costa Rica so much because I'm so committed to my own development and growth, and there's so much for me there. Final question to be asked. Any updates on the retreat in the Forge for Europe? I think is what he's asked. Oh yeah, the retreat in Europe. So yes, we're I really want to create a retreat in Europe where you get to come hang out with us. Maybe we go to some vineyards, maybe we sample a little bit of vino, maybe some olive oil, be in the countryside of Europe. I love Europe so much. I've got roots back there. My dad's from England. I can feel that culture in me. There's something about it. I don't know what it is, but Europe is expensive and it's harder to find booking times. And so one of the challenges we're facing right now is like, one, there's a lot that we're creating in the world, and it's a little like, uh, how do we start this process? And it feels a little bit like with a retreat, we're kind of diving in to the deep end head first. So I think this is still a work in progress, but I think what there is for us to do first is to run a public intensive over there. So like rent a space that we can use for like 4 days, 4 to 5 days, rent a block of rooms so that people can stay on site if they want. Otherwise, they can stay in the surrounding area and then bring people together. And what that allows us to do is not worry so much about the logistics of food. It allows us to not worry so much about like having to fill as many spaces because if it's a retreat, we got to fill all the rooms we rent. Whereas if it's an intensive, we don't have to worry so much about that. And it allows us to take the first step to get to like know a bit of the places that we might go, kind of get a sense of that. So I think that that's the first thing we're going to do with regards to that. And then some other stuff that I want to share that's kind of on the horizon that's coming forward. The first is that Bay and I are going to start doing monthly free Forge calls. So once a month, we'll have a public Forge call that's open to anyone that wants to come. If you enjoyed this content, you should come to these calls because we'll be doing deeper work. It's not so much me teaching as it is working with what's showing up in the space, supporting people, perhaps you, with whatever's there. And there's wisdom can only be gained through experience. We can gain understanding and knowledge from a teaching, but wisdom is only gained through our own experience. And so the opportunity in attending these calls is to gain that wisdom because you will go through something. We will support you to move through something in the moment to create the actual wisdom. And so those calls will happen once a month. We don't yet know the timing of them, but the structure of that will be that we're going to create a public Forge group. We're going to invite everyone and their dog to come join us in there, and then that will be where we will run those calls. Those calls will be run out of that group, and um, we'll surround those calls once a month with conversation. And we're also considering having a second call led by our leadership team. Those members of our leadership team that have been in the Forge with us, training and developing in the crucible of leadership over like the last 3 years plus. So these are people that are deep in their own work. They'll probably be leading some calls too. So that's one thing that's on the horizon that I'm pretty excited about. Be cool to do that. The second thing is the Forge 2023 is open for registration. So we're in April, May, June, July, August. We've got 5 months before we start in September. Those months will go incredibly quick, I promise. And if you're like, I've got lots of time to think about it and blah, 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 I would invite you to act as though you didn't. Not to create a sense of urgency and a fire under yourself and some stress, but to like, if this feels like something you're called towards, this kind of work, I would invite you to like not delay, to just be like, okay, what are the questions I might have? And then bring those forward. Get into a conversation with me, get into a conversation with Bay, send me an email, adam@adamquiney.com. Just ask about the Forge. Reach out to people in the Forge already to see like, hey, what was your experience like? How has this been? Have you gotten what you wanted? Some of them are in our chat. We've got Michelle here, Tara here. I think we had Monica Burrell earlier on. Just see if there's anyone else. Raphael Bennett. So you can reach out to any of those people and just see like, hey, how has this program been? Has this done something for you? It runs from September to May. It includes a retreat, I think to Costa Rica, but we're changing things up, so I'm not sure, but a retreat that is paid for. Once you pay your cost to enter the Forge, that retreat is covered for you. You will completely have your life changed. This work will absolutely transform your experience of yourself, other people's experience of you, and how you show up in the world, both as an individual, a partner, an entrepreneur, and a leader. So I can't speak highly enough of the Forge because I created it and I'm awesome. And so too is the Forge, and you will find that too. And Michelle's asking, are we capping numbers? We are we are waiting to see what shows up. So if we have a lot of people in the current iteration of the Forge that are like, we want to be on the leadership team, then we'll probably have more participants come through so that we can hold that. And if we have less people come forward on the leadership team, then we'll probably cap the numbers at something. So it's 3 people currently registered. Usually we fill up sort of around end of June, mid-July. So that's amazing. You should definitely check that out. Lori, you and I should talk. Send me a message, send me an email. Let's chat. It's an amazing program. And Tara, Michelle, if you feel called, please share in the comments just something you've gotten from it, or just your experience of it, or something hilarious or fun that we've done in there. The last thing I want to share today is the Essence of Mastery. So that is a program. It is a what do I call it? It's a summit that's happening June 5th through 9th. It's put on by my friend Annie Gelfland, who is an incredible coach and woman in her own right. And it is all coaches with the MCC credential, the Master Certified Coach credential. So these are, again, people out of a very rarefied group of people, 1,500 in the world. We will each be talking about different topics, and it's going to be super fun, super engaging. The thing I'm going to be talking about is creating clients artfully and as an expression of yourself, which I'm really excited about because there's not a lot of like client creation stuff that speaks from the place of our being and how to become a clearing for clients to show up in, as opposed to like a bunch of doing and algorithms you got to follow and the hacks to make clients come at you or whatever. So that happens June 5th through June 9th. You can search for Essence of Mastery 2023, and I'll put a link in the comments if that's something that you're curious about. And Michelle just wrote here, just join the Forge if you're thinking about it. That's what I have to say about it. So there's your there's your testimonial. And Tara also says you'll make great friends too, which is absolutely true. You will create relationships that will stay for the rest of your life because you're going to be in a container with people that are doing truly profound, intimate work. And you will stand for each other and witness each other in your breakthroughs and transformation. And that creates a bond that is inseparable. It'll be with you for the rest of your life. Okay, great live today, guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Michelle, Tara, Lori, Maria, and everyone else that came and hung out. Thank you. I love you. I hope you all have a very good Easter weekend, and we'll talk soon. Laters.